us. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. Please turn off or silence all of your communication devices. When there's an agenda item that includes a public hearing, please understand that the applicant will be allowed to speak first. After the applicant finishes, the public will be asked to speak. When called upon to speak, please approach the podium and state your name and address for the public record. You will have one opportunity per agenda item to speak unless the Plan Commission member requires clarification or wishes to ask you a question. After the public finishes speaking, the applicant will be asked if they have a final statement for the Plan Commission, and then the Commission will take action on that agenda item. So I appreciate your understanding on this, and now we're on to the agenda. The first item on the agenda is roll call.
Councilmember Ford.
Here.
Mr. Kiefer.
Here.
Mr. Marshall. Ms. Prop.
Here.
Ms. Shireman. Mr. Bowen. Mr. Coulibaly. Ms. Davy.
Here.
Vice Chair Mitchell.
Here.
Chairperson Perry.
Here.
6 present.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the June 7th, 2021 minutes. What have we, Plan Commission?
Move to accept as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Having seen none, a voice vote is okay, so let's do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes are approved. Item number 1 on the agenda is a consent agenda item filled with 6 items that are mostly easements. We will hear a very brief summary on each of those 6 items. After that summary, I will ask the Plan Commission if they would like to pull off any one of those 6 items in order to discuss further. If not, we will take a vote on that consent agenda. Jeff, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item on the consent agenda is a sidewalk and electrical easement located at the northeasterly corner of High Avenue and Vine Avenue. Up on the screen, it's a little 5 foot by 5 foot, 12.5 square foot easement. The immediate purpose of the easement is to allow the city to install ADA compliant public concrete sidewalk, and the easement also allow the city in the future to install electrical facilities such as traffic signals or related electrical equipment if ever needed. Second item is another sidewalk and electric easement at the southeasterly corner of High Avenue and Vine Avenue. And on the corner, it's right across the street from the item A. And again, this is the same purpose to allow ADA compliant public sidewalk and future electrical facilities. The third request is another sidewalk and electrical easement at the southwesterly corner of Algoma Boulevard in Wisconsin. And again, it's another 5 foot by 5 foot, 12.5 square foot triangular shaped easement, again for ADA sidewalk installation and future electrical facilities. The fourth easement is the fourth request is a series of 3 different easements located at the Camping World site, which is currently under construction. The first easement request is a pond maintenance easement located, that's the bulk of the easement request here. This easement will allow public stormwater originating from outside the owner's property to drain through the pond, which is going to be constructed and maintained by the owner. And the easement will allow city access to the easement area to ensure the pond is functioning as designed and is being properly maintained. The second easement is a small little 21 foot by 63 foot easement, which will allow stormwater originating from the pond to flow northward off of the subject property. And the third easement is an irregular shaped area located north of the Ripple Avenue right-of-way. The purpose of this easement is to allow the flow of public stormwater to flow northward onto the private property. The owner of the development will be responsible for the construction of stormwater drainage pipes and other facilities with a drainage overflow swale in accordance to city-approved plans. The easement will allow city access to maintain and repair these facilities as needed. The fourth request, or no, I'm sorry, the fifth request is a 50-foot drainage easement located just north of the Camping World property. It's currently undeveloped. This is Big Red Chrome, the subject site pretty much encircles the Big Chrome property. The easement, again, is 50 feet wide and follows an existing creek that flows northward and then heading eastward out to the public right-of-way of South Washburn Street. And the purpose of this easement is to allow public stormwater to flow onto the property from the Camping World site and flow off of the property onto the North Washburn Street property. The easement will allow city access to ensure that the grading is in compliance with approved plans and repair stormwater facilities as needed. And the last item on the consent agenda is the street right-of-way dedication for the widening and easterly extension of East 9th Avenue and the widening of South Main Street. This is in the city's Sawdust District area. Over the course of the past 20 years or so, several city plans had called for the abandonment of this section of Pioneer Drive and open this up to the public, which is currently underway. Just recently, a 1,200-foot section of Riverwalk was constructed. But to continue a looped road network, these plans called for the extension of East 9th Avenue to Pioneer Drive, so Pioneer Drive doesn't get cut off. The widening of East 9th Avenue will go from 60 feet to approximately 67 feet wide. And then there's an additional bump out area which increases the width to, I believe, 75 feet wide to allow some off-street parking opportunities. And then South Main Street will be widened an additional 20 feet from its original 60 feet to 80 feet. That's based on city's recommendations for arterial class streets such as South Main Street to be 80 feet wide. A couple years ago, the right-of-way of South Main in front of the arena was widened from 60 to 80 feet, and the city will continue this widening process as opportunities arrive. With that, staff is recommending approval of the consent agenda as proposed.
All right, thank you. I'm going to accept that staff report as part of our record. Plan Commission, are there any items on that consent agenda that you wish to have pulled and have further discussion on? Okay, having seen none, we will, is there any technical questions to staff? None? All right, we'll have a voice vote on the consent agenda.
Councilmember Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer,
Aye.
Ms. Prop,
Aye.
Ms. Davy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell,
Aye.
Chairman Perry.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
All right, item number 2, it's a public hearing. Conditional use permit request to establish a restaurant land use at 1675 Oregon Street. Nilla Olkey is the owner and applicant. Have there been any site inspections from the Plan Commission? See Ms. Prop. Seeing no others, I will accept your staff report as part of the record. Go ahead and present your summary, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a conditional use permit request for a restaurant land use at 1675 Oregon Street. The intended use is addition of a coffee shop in the lower unit of the building. Let's see here. As you can see, the subject site is on the north west corner of 17th and Oregon. Again, here's another picture that shows the parking lot and the building. So here's the proposed site plan. As you can see here, up in the upper right hand corner is where the proposed coffee shop is looking to be built. Existing was a barber shop. And so in order to do this, they have to go through the conditional land use process, which is why it's here today. The applicant stated that the coffee shop is planned to be open from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. and the existing land use, which is an art studio, would continue at the hours that it's been operating at. There is a sign out front, which you can kind of see here. And staff just wanted to make a note that if the intention is to modify any structural components of that sign, that an encroachment agreement will be needed. With that, staff is recommending approval of the proposed use.
All right, thank you for your summary. Are there any technical questions from the Plan Commission to the staff? Any technical questions? All right, having seen none, I can open the public comment period and request a statement from the applicant. Is the applicant here? Yes. Would you like to make a statement? Sure. Okay, approach the podium, please. Okay. State your name and address for our records, please.
My name is Nilla D. Elke, and I live at 500 South Madison Street, Waupun, Wisconsin. I am looking to take over the art studio part of the building for my recently deceased friend, who I made a promise to, and I'm looking to carry that out. The coffee shop is my thought for being able to service the neighborhood as well as other people coming into the area. I'm looking to have it be a friendly neighborhood coffee shop. My degree is in family and consumer science. I was a teacher for 30 years. I've handled food in very different commodities. I presently work in a bakery. So the coffee shop just seemed like a rather logical direction for me. The area, I think, would benefit from it. There are new condos going in, lots of people to be serviced. I enjoy meeting people. The coffee shop is under construction right now, although without your approval, I couldn't do all of the things that I wanted to do yet. I have a lot of people on hold. So it's the kind of thing that I want to keep moving on. I look forward to being in the Oshkosh area and contributing to the community. And I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Unless you have questions for me. Anybody have any questions? I'd be happy to answer.
Well, thank you. At this time, I'll open the public comment period and ask for additional comment from the public. Is there anybody that wishes to speak on this agenda item? Go ahead, sir. Name and address for our records, please.
Good afternoon, committee, council. Tom Brown, 111 East Whipple Avenue, Oshkosh. I'm the fiance of the former business owner at the site, and Barb Schneider. And Barbie's dream was to have that building as a art studio gallery for because she was also a retired teacher, just as Dee is. That area of the coffee shop was a classroom and a workroom area for her students, she taught teaching classes, and she sold some of her art and some of her friends' art. I've known Dielke for quite a few years, and I know that her and her husband are going to do a bang-up job at this location. And so please support this measure. Staff has recommended that it aligns with city comprehensive plan, and I would recommend it because it aligns with Dee's plan and Barbie's plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public that would like to speak on this agenda item? Okay, having seen none, I'm going to close the public comment period. Generally, at this time, I ask for a closing statement from the applicant, although it is not necessary. Would you like to make a closing statement?
Sure. I agree with Tom. Hello. That I think it would have been Barb's wishes to have the studio go on and to pull in the neighborhood. And that's really what her idea was, to service the city of Oshkosh and pull in the neighborhood and make it a friendly area to come to. I've talked to numbers of the neighbors who've said, I'll be there, I like coffee. So one of my neighbors even suggested a walk-up window. So I'm processing that. But I like Oshkosh a lot. I've gone to school here as well, so it's a great place to be. I would appreciate the council's endorsement. So on that note, thank you.
Okay, commission, on to action by you.
Motion to adopt the findings and recommendation is stated in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on this motion from the Plan Commission? All right, I see none, so we are going to move on to a vote. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer.
Aye.
Ms. Prop.
Aye.
Ms. Davy.
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell.
Aye.
Chairman Perry.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you. On to item number 3, conditional use permit for outdoor commercial entertainment at 309 and 313 Washington Avenue. The Ronald H. Johnson and Jane K. Johnson Irrevocable Endowment Trust is the owner. Carol Velasco is the applicant. Have there been any site inspections by the Plan Commission? I see 2, include me as well. I will accept the staff report as part of the record. Staff, please present your summary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the subject site is located on the south side of Washington Avenue. It consists of 2 vacant parcels, totaling about a half acre in size, immediately to the west of the Howard site. The surrounding area is a mixture of commercial and residential uses, along with the YMCA and park area to the north. The 2 vacant sites previously had multifamily residential building and a commercial office building, which were both recently raised. Aerial view of the subject site. So these buildings were both recently raised, and the applicant is now proposing to combine these 2 vacant lots with the Howard site to allow for open green space for outdoor events held by the Howard. Here's the site plan. So this will be considered outdoor commercial entertainment, which requires a conditional use permit in the UMU district. The area will be enclosed by a combination of 8-foot cedar privacy fence and 8-foot wrought iron fence along the front. And that will also include a 16 by 16 wood gazebo within the enclosed area. The applicant anticipates a maximum of 250 guests for wedding ceremonies and cocktail receptions, with outdoor events ending before dark in most occasions. The area meets setback requirements for non-residential uses in the UMU district. It also meets the requirement that outdoor entertainment activities not be located closer than 50 feet from a residentially zoned property. The property is exempt from parking requirements as it's within the parking requirement exemption overlay. The Howard does have 2 existing parking areas with a total of 147 stalls, which will meet the parking needs for the site. The addition of the outdoor commercial entertainment area will require additional street frontage landscaping along the area, and the applicant has noted that they have planted 3 crabapples, and they have plans on planting a tall evergreen tree to meet the remainder of those street frontage points, and that will be verified during site plan review. So with that, staff recommends approval of the CUP with the findings in your staff reports and the condition that final landscaping plan be approved by community development.
Okay, thank you for your report. Plan Commission, are there any technical questions for the staff at this time? Ms. Prop?
Yeah, isn't an 8-foot fence higher than we normally allow? And where along that property line would the 8-foot cedar fence be?
So the UMU zoning district does allow the 8-foot fence, so it is compliant with our standards. The 8-foot cedar portion is along the west property line. The applicant has been working with those 2 property lines to actually straighten out the property right now. As you can see, the very jagged line is the current property line. They're going through a CSM and working those applicants to actually kind of modify that whole property line to everyone's benefit. And as part of that discussion, they determined that the cedar fence was appropriate with those neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Any other technical questions?
What are those neighbors that are there?
I believe one of them is a rental property. I do not recall what is in 303. I believe it is another residential rental property. If memory serves me correctly, and hopefully the applicants correct me if I'm wrong here, is like a Airbnb type facility.
The back door's a few.
Okay, any other technical questions? Okay, at this time, I will open the public hearing, and I will ask for a statement from the applicant. Is the applicant here? If you can approach the podium, state your name and address, that would be great. Thank you.
Carol Velasco, you want personal address? Is that correct?
Address for the Howard is
309,
fine.
313, and then 405 is the Howard's address. So to answer the question, the Victorian property on the corner, that's going to be a residential property that's going through renovation right now. And then the property on, I believe, Broad Street, that's going to be an Airbnb, so. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Were there any specific questions? Just a broad statement. Basically, the plan with this is just to utilize like the space in the neighborhood. If you have driven down there, it really will complement is being across the street from the Y. We've worked with them a bit too, just on talking through like landscaping and overall property. I think that with everybody in the neighborhood, it's maybe been one person that lives in that like block that we haven't really had very specific conversations with how it'll play into the neighborhood and how we'll work together on that. So really the ideal is just to make it a bit more cohesive with the Howard and community-wide. There's not really an opportunity for people to have an outdoor space for their event with the capacity for indoor space that the Howard offers. So definitely something the community is lacking in general right now. So that's really what we hope to accomplish with it. As far as the landscaping goes, there are 3 crabapple trees that have been put out front. In addition to that, there are 6 trees that have put on the west side of the property, 5 on the south side of the property, and 4 on the east side of the property. So that's already been planted. And then we would be sodding the property. So as soon as we get approval, you'll see the space improving quite rapidly.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak at this time? Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? Having seen none, I'll close the public hearing. Generally, I ask for a closing statement from the applicant, but it is not required. An applicant, you would not make a closing statement. Okay. Commission action.
Make a motion to adopt the recommendations and findings as stated in the staff report.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Yes, Ms. Davy.
I just have one question, and it probably is for the applicant. I'm sorry, Carol. Is this in addition to whatever would be going on inside? So you would have 250 people outside plus however many inside holds? Yes, please, so that we can, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So when we say 250, the capacity of the venue for like, say we have a wedding there, seated capacity for a wedding is 250 people. So right now, like our Great Hall space, which is the upper portion of the building, has 150 person max capacity, which for us generally doesn't pose an issue, but people probably would venture to increase that number for like a ceremony outdoors if they had that 250 max in our ballroom area. So we wouldn't see like 250 spread in each area. It'd kind of be like a crowd that
It's kind of going to be an either or.
Yeah,
I mean,
so like what
You're
we
not
would
going to have 550 people there all at once.
No, we
Okay.
sure would not want that. Yeah. So 250 is like, that is like a pretty max capacity. We do all of our own in-house catering. So really like food capacity is our capacity. Who we can feed is what we're dealing with there. So we would see one of two things. We would see either maybe an outdoor event that was like separate from like wedding ceremony where people would be out there, but still with like parking and things like that. We see that being like a nice sweet spot. But otherwise, if you see sort of a lingering crowd, it would be people who started at the ceremony and then they would head indoors for reception, cocktail hour, and everything like that.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be sure that it was alternate and not additional.
Yeah, we'd be herding cattle a fair amount if that were the case.
I was thinking of bathrooms, frankly.
Yes.
All right, is there any other discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, I have a roll call vote.
Councilmember Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer,
Aye.
Ms. Prop,
Aye.
Ms. Davy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell,
Aye.
Chairman Perry.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thanks. Item number 4, I am not participating in, so I'm passing off to our vice chair.
Thank you. Item number 4 is a public hearing, review 2022 annual action plan, community development block grant program. This is not an inspectable or an inspections-related item, so we'll skip that. And the chair does accept the draft report as part of the record, and we'd invite staff to provide a summary overview of the draft plan.
Thank you. Every year, the city receives CDBG entitlement allocation from HUD. The 2022 allocation is just over $812,000. Of that amount, a maximum of 20% can be spent on admin activities, and a maximum of 15% can be spent on public service activities. Once you allocate your admin percentage of the remaining funds, a minimum of 70% must be spent on low to moderate income or LMI activities. The allocations you see here on the screen and what was laid out in the staff report is what we're proposing for activities to be carried out. Planning Commission is being asked to make a determination of consistency, that these proposed programs and activities are consistent with the city's comprehensive plan as updated in any other official maps or other planned activities of the city. So it goes into more detail in the staff report, but I can answer any questions that the commission has.
Just to add a couple of brief comments. There are some new activities up here, obviously with the housing study going into place this year. The city has, staff has recommended that we do use some of our block grant entitlement funds to further the housing study.
Okay. Thank you. Turn it over to the commission. Is there any technical questions for staff? No. Okay. We will open it up for public comment, yes?
Yes.
All right. Is there anybody from the public that would like to talk related to the draft comprehensive plan, or the draft of the community development block grant program plan? Being none, we will close discussion from the public and ask for any sort of closing statement from the applicant. No from you. No. So then we'll accept a motion to adopt the plan.
Recommended council.
Okay, motion to adopt the findings and recommendations of the plan.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? I have some questions, if I may. It talks about evaluation and ongoing monitoring being an important part. I was hoping you could maybe describe that a little bit. What ongoing evaluation and monitoring occurs with the program? How do we know that we're meeting the goals that we've outlined, the objectives? Is there a halfway point evaluation meeting that, you know, we can maybe look at to see, well, how are we doing? Do we need to readdress our focus? And I'm just not sure I understand the ongoing evaluation and monitoring.
Sure. Can you point to where you're referring to in the staff report?
Sure. I mean, in general, that's something that obviously the plan has objectives and goals, but it does talk in the introductory section. Like number 3, evaluation of past performance. The number 1 has, here's our overall arching goals for the plan.
I can help. So a couple of things take place. The first is the annual auditing that we do with HUD on our objectives and goals, as well as the IDS reporting that staff does on the goals of the plan. Second is we'll come in later this year with CAPER. The CAPER is actually our annual performance report as measured against what those goals and objectives are. Basically, every year we compare the previous action plan through the CAPER to what the plan called for us to do. So usually we do that evaluation process yearly as part of the CAPER.
Are all of the reviews and monitoring of implementation, is that all done then internal?
Correct. I don't believe HUD has any specific requirements, but we can verify of intermediate public meetings for them. It's something we could always consider, obviously, doing if we felt that was necessary. But HUD really puts that onus of all the monitoring onto the internal audits that we're required to do, as well as then those CAPERs where they're comparing the action plans to the approved plan.
Follow up on that. If there are, let's say, in 6 months, a plan commission member or some in a similar capacity had inquiries or one seeking for an update on status, it sounds like that doesn't occur elsewhere.
Typically the only thing we do would be through the CAPER process. But if there's something you said, we could definitely consider some sort of overview rehash meeting where we go through kind of here's where the objectives are goal are, here's the program that's been allocated for those. And that's something we could definitely do.
Okay. Continuing on page 12, it talks about neighborhood association outreach. I was curious if you could just give a brief overview of what that outreach consisted of. It was
Jason, if you have it, you can jump into.
I can jump in on that one. We continue to work with the neighborhood associations. There's over 21 right now, so we have alliance meetings that we have staff at. I'm actually on the GO-HNI board, which kind of is the neighborhood associations kind of umbrella agency to work with. So we're continuously working with, looking at different opportunities to utilize CDBG funds, and then also to, see if there's any initiatives in the neighborhoods that, might make sense to, include as for next year's goals or anything like that, and just kind of see what those needs are. We work with the neighborhood associations when they're putting together their plans, their neighborhood action plans, and so we include information in there about CDBG also.
Great, thank you. Follow up on that. So, in the creation of this draft plan, the neighborhoods were consulted.
We did reach out with GO-HNI. If you look on here, and I don't know if it's specifically on this page, we reached out to quite a few different organizations and let them kind of weigh in on the areas where we're looking to allocate our funding for this next year's action plan. And, there's different public-private committees and groups that we're on. So we do have that documentation where we sent, actually, I think it was a survey we sent out for, what folks would like to see, what they think is working, what's not working.
Okay.
We do also hold a public hearing prior to this where we go over the action plan as well with the public. So I forgot to note that earlier, but this is actually the second public hearing we've done now on the action plan for this year.
Yeah, and I may have missed it, or maybe our neighborhood association didn't send it out and via email out to the group, but it notes that that the neighborhood associations were engaged and
Yeah, sometimes we work through the alliance group too. So not they usually there's a representative from the different associations there.
Got it. Yeah. Continuing, if no one else has any questions, just on page 7, the Housing Coalition small minor note had previously met monthly, but that has shifted, and so now it's more like a regular or periodic.
Okay. We can update that.
And then just last question, so this is an application-based solicitation, meaning that, nonprofits and whatnot, they apply for funding?
Or the public service grants.
For the public service.
Sure. Is there an evaluation scoring system for that? Or is it kind of just like an internal discussion on, I think there's a board, but
Yep.
is there an actual point system that is applied to those applications?
There's not currently a point system. It's more discussion based.
Okay. And then what happens to the applicants that are not supported? Is it kind of an all or nothing, and if they don't get it, we simply send a letter, or do we try it and connect them with alternative resources, or what's the?
Right. Typically, there's funding that's supplemented within the meeting. Usually, no request goes ungranted entirely, but letters are sent out regardless of amount, whether they don't receive a grant or they
Got
do.
it.
And that's a big part why the Community Foundation is involved, because they really look to connect them maybe with some private funds that may be able to help, a organization maybe didn't align with all the goals that we have, but, it could be funded through the Community Foundation.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll close discussion and call for a vote.
Councilmember Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer,
Aye.
Ms. Prop,
Aye.
Ms. Davy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell.
Aye.
Motion carried 5-0.
All right, thank you. I'm back. Item number 5, specific implementation plan amendment for refuse enclosure at 240 West 9th Avenue. Heath Lutheran Church is the owner and applicant. Have there been any site inspections? See none. I will accept the staff report as part of the record. Go ahead and present your summary, please.
Thank you. So the site is a single lot containing a lot about 1.5 acres in size, bounded by West 9th Avenue to the south, Minnesota Street to the west, and West 8th Avenue to the north. And it is home to Peace Lutheran Church. The surrounding area consists primarily of single and two-family residential uses to the north, south, and west, and Oregon Street commercial uses to the east. In 2021, the site was rezoned to institutional district with a plan development overlay. It also included a GDP SIP for the house located at the southwest corner of the block to have the former parsonage split off from the lot. The approved GDP SIP included relocation of the refuse enclosure from the parsonage site to the northwest corner alcove of the building. So the only proposed change to the site is relocation of the dumpster enclosure from the approved location to the parking lot area west of the church building. The applicant is proposing a 2-foot setback from the property line, where code requires a 7.5-foot setback. It's also closer to Minnesota Street than the church, where code requires dumpster enclosures to be at least as far back from the street as a building. So staff is supportive of the setback reduction along the side property line. However, we are recommending that it be increased from 2 feet to 5 feet to allow for some landscaping on that back side of the dumpster enclosure. Staff is also supportive of the BSM for placement of the enclosure closer to the street than the building, as there are minimal areas within the site to meet that requirement. The applicant has noted the originally approved location at the northwest corner of the building may experience nuisances along the front entrance, such as odors and bees, which is why they want to relocate it further from that entrance within the parking lot. The enclosure location will result in the loss of 4 parking stalls. The loss of these parking spaces will leave 50 remaining parking stalls with 9 additional handicap stalls. This is slightly short of the code minimum of 1 space per 5 seats at max capacity. Staff does not have concerns with the slight parking reduction, as it should still meet the needs of the church, and there's also on-street parking available nearby if needed. The applicant is proposing the refuse enclosure be constructed of 6-foot tall, simulated stonework solid vinyl privacy fencing. This will require BSM, as code requires refuse enclosures to be constructed of solid wood or a material used on the main building. Staff does not have concerns with the proposed material, as it will be solid and will provide relatively compatible appearance with the stone exterior of the church facades. Staff is recommending that the applicant provide 66 evergreen tree landscaping points, which would equal 2 arborvitae, to be added along the south side of the refuse enclosure to offset the requested BSMs for the placement of it. So we'd be requesting them on this south side of the dumpster enclosure. And with that, staff recommends approval of the SIP amendment with the findings and conditions in your staff report.
All right, thank you. Are there any technical questions to the staff on this one?
If I could just add very briefly, the reason we're proposing the 5 feet instead of the 2 feet is ultimately doesn't change the loss of number of parking stalls. Whether it's 2 or 5 feet, they still lose the 4 stalls. Felt that additional 3 feet gives a little bit more room, a little bit of setback from that residential property, a little bit more room for the landscaping without necessarily having a net change in what their goal is in terms of minimal parking loss.
All right, Mr. Ford.
Yeah, so you've seen the materials, right? Or you're familiar with them? I just want to make sure we're avoiding, was it Sawyer Street where we had the one that was relatively compatible that wasn't?
We've seen examples, have not seen any in person on this situation. It's a tricky situation. Ideally, we would love the stone, but we understand, given the nonprofit religious nature of it, it's a little more cost prohibitive to do full stone to match the building. That would obviously be our preference. We feel this is about a decent compromise, including adding that landscaping should hopefully help soften it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Any other technical questions for staff? All right, I see none. We will have a public comment on this. Is there a statement from the applicant? Is the applicant here and wish to make a statement? I do not see the applicant being here. Is there any other additional public comment? Does anybody in the audience like to make public comment on this item? I also see none, so I will close the public comment period, and I will ask the commission for some action on this item.
Motion to adopt the findings and recommendation as stated in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this motion? I see none, so we will hold a vote. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer,
Aye.
Ms. Prop,
Aye.
Ms. Davy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell,
Aye.
Chairperson Perry.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you. On to item number 6, a specific implementation plan for mixed-use development at properties located on the east side of South Main Street. It's the Redevelopment Authority of Oshkosh is the owner, and Jake Bunz of T-Wall Enterprises is the applicant. Have there been any site inspections of this property? Ms. Davy, Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Prop. Okay. I will accept the staff report as part of the record. Please present your summary.
Thank you. So the subject site consists of 11 parcels located within the Sawdust District on the east side of South Main Street. In March of this year, a zone change was approved to have all subject properties rezoned to RMU PD. Also, a general development plan was approved for a mixed-use development. Here's the area of the existing site. And here's the plan for the site. The development will include 3 5-story buildings as well as a private clubhouse. The buildings will be mixed-use buildings with first-floor commercial space and multifamily units above. Other amenities will include an amphitheater, pool, pickleball court, and a dog park across East 9th Avenue, shown in the upper right. So the site will have access from the end of East 7th Avenue, South Main Street, and East 9th Avenue. All 3 buildings will have both underground and surface parking. The total parking for this site will equal slightly more than 1 parking space per bedroom. So staff feels that this will meet the parking needs of the residential units and is supportive of a BSM for reduced parking, which would be more than that. Staff anticipates future on-street parking as shown on the plan along East 9th Avenue and along South Main Street, and shared public parking areas around the development, and on-site parking will meet the parking needs of the commercial spaces for the site. The applicant is requesting reduced front yard setbacks along East 7th Avenue, South Main Street, and East 9th Avenue to 0 feet. And that's for the entrance, plaza, and walkway areas. Code would require a 10-foot setback from those property lines. And the applicant is also requesting reduced side yard setbacks from the northwest parking lot, which will be parking for the restaurant in building A1. Also requesting reduced setback for the southeast parking lot as well, where code also requires a 10-foot setback. So staff is supportive of the reduced front setbacks that will serve to provide a pedestrian-oriented use of the site. Although it is zone RMU, the site will function similar to properties within the central mixed-use district, as it's kind of a downtown area, which would typically have a 0-foot front setback requirement. Staff is also supportive of the side yard setback reductions for parking, as those are needed to allow for the on-site parking to fit within the site. Staff has received concerns from the neighboring property to the north of the reduced setback for that parking lot, as they would prefer it to be softened with landscaping or a fence. Staff is recommending that the southeast setback be increased to 5.9 feet from the required 3.9 feet, and they could do that by reducing the width from 26 feet for the drive aisle to 24 feet, which is the code minimum. Staff is also recommending a BSM to allow 0-foot setbacks for future internal property lines, which may be needed for potential separation of project phases. Also, the applicant is requesting a BSM for the building A1 to be located within the 30-foot by 30-foot corner vision clearance triangle. Staff is supportive of that, as East 7th Avenue will only be used for access to that parking lot, so it'll be relatively low traffic. Again, the site will function similar to a centrally mixed-use zone property, which would typically be exempt from that corner vision requirement. The proposed dog park on the south side of East 9th Avenue will be enclosed with chain link fencing, as well as a wrought iron fenced entrance vestibule. The vestibule will have a concrete entrance pad with a 5-foot setback off of East 9th Avenue, and that will require BSM as well, because that would be a 10-foot setback. Staff does not have concerns with that BSM, as it will only be used for that entrance area and should protect the area from damage and mud around that entrance from foot traffic. The plans include, the elevation plans include wall signage, a projecting sign, canopy signs, and a roof sign. Total on-building sign for the site falls under the code maximum of 1 square foot per linear foot of building frontage, with the exception of the northeast facade, shown on the left-hand side here. That will have wall signage and roof signage totaling 295 square feet on a 65-foot long facade. A BSM will also be required for the roof sign, as code prohibits roof signs. Staff is supportive of the requested BSM for the increased on-building signage, as they are offsetting this BSM by providing substantially less wall signage on the remainder of the building than allowed by code. And staff is also supportive of the roof sign, as it is on a uniquely prominent facade kind of facing downtown and the river. And they are incorporating Sawdust District logo shown here, and that will serve as placemaking for the Sawdust District. They're also requesting a BSM for the projecting sign on the corner of the building along, I believe that's 7th and Main Street, as the top of the sign will be 58 feet 4 inches, where the maximum height is the second-story windowsill, or 18 feet. So staff is supportive of that increased sign height as well, as that will serve to identify the site, and will again incorporate the Sawdust District and provide placemaking for that area. Here's the landscaping plan. The applicant is requesting BSMs for reduced street side building foundation landscaping on buildings A2 and A3. Staff is supportive of that reduced foundation landscaping along those frontages, as the plan will exceed the overall foundation landscaping requirement for these buildings. And also providing the foundation landscaping on the interior of these buildings will provide enhanced appearance from the river walk and from the river. So staff is supportive of BSM for that reduction along those specific frontages. For paved areas, they are meeting all point requirements. However, there are 4 landscape islands along the east side of the building A1 and A2 parking lots. So staff is supportive of a BSM to remove trees out of those islands and move them to the interior of that parking lot area, as those parking row ends are up against a building and maybe less suitable for tree growth. The plan shows no street frontage landscaping along the South Main Street frontage on the private side of the development. So staff is supportive of a BSM to waive that street frontage requirement, as the applicant is providing street trees, which they will work with the Department of Public Works on that, but they will be providing street trees to compensate for not having them on the private side of the development. Staff is also supportive of reduced East 7th Avenue street frontage, as the patio and walk area reduces usable area for tree plantings. And the applicant is significantly exceeding the overall landscaping point requirement, and they're offsetting setback reductions with that. There's the lighting plan. Difficult to see anything as far as the lighting numbers, but they are meeting the 0.4 foot candle requirement for all parking areas, and they are exceeding the 0.5 foot candle maximum at the East 7th Ave, South Main Street, and East 9th Avenue property lines. Staff is supportive of the BSM to allow that increased lighting along those property lines, as it will only be increasing lighting in public areas along the street and along the Riverwalk as well, so it should not negatively affect any of the neighboring properties. For building facades, staff has reviewed the provided elevations for comparison with riverfront overlay design standards. Even though it's zoned RMU and not within the riverfront overlay, we still looked at it from the intent of the riverfront overlay standards, and the elevations are utilizing a combination of glazing, masonry brick, and masonry stone to meet the Class 1 and glazing requirements of the RFO, with the exception of the east facade of Building A1 and the southeast facade of the clubhouse. However, staff does not have concerns with the BSM to allow that, as the Class 1 material allotment for the overall site is 87%, where the maximum is 70%, so they're greatly exceeding the Class 1 requirement, also exceeding the window requirement, and they're providing a balcony for each unit, which is a code requirement. So staff feels that the building designs are consistent with the Sawdust District core sub-area design guidelines of modern industrial style architecture, and inviting storefronts with large windows and displays, prominent entrances, and attractive architectural detail. So these are facades for Building A1. So that's the one along South Main Street and East 7th Avenue. Here's Building A2 with a Main Street frontage. And Building A3 along South Main Street and East 9th Avenue. Here's the clubhouse renderings using the same materials as well. Here's a rendering with a view from the northwest, a view from the southwest, southeast, and from the northeast. So with that, staff recommends approval of the SIP with the findings and conditions in your staff report.
All right, thank you. Are there any technical questions from the Plan Commission to the staff? Ms. Prop?
This afternoon, we received an email from Jim Larson, architect, which I thought made some very pertinent points. I have great respect for Mr. Larson. Has the staff had an opportunity to look at those?
Yeah, we looked at it, given the nature of where that parking lot is. This is, again, one of the situations where RMU versus CMU. If this was, for example, a CMU zone property was on North Main Street, they'd be able to go much closer to that property line. I know Mr. Larson had mentioned like a 20-foot setback. In CMU, SMU, many of our zoning districts, there is never a 20-foot setback requirement from parking lots, especially when you're adjacent to another parking lot. I know they have some concerns with, potential individuals parking in their lot. I think it's something we could work with Mr. Larson and his ownership group on additional signage, things to make sure we differentiate, the lot for the Mill on Main versus their private lot. Potentially, we could work with the applicant on maybe fencing if it would, help the Brooklyn building individuals. I don't think the setback is necessarily necessary in this case, especially in an urban setting like this where it's parking lot to parking lot.
Okay, and there was some concern about snow removal and things like that.
Yeah, we have sufficient space on the north and the east, and if they have to remove snow off-site, similar to like we do with a lot of city lots, that'll be an option for them as well. But yeah, they'll have to make sure they do keep any snow off of that adjoining property. That will be a requirement of this, similar to any other. We don't allow people to push snow onto a neighboring property. Again, it's something a fence could potentially assist with, just making sure there's that physical barrier.
Okay, Mr. Ford.
Yeah, but is the city staff have any appetite, or have you thought about revisiting our ordinance regarding roof signs? It just seems like this has come up a couple times, and we've kind of said, yeah, it looks nice, so.
Yeah. At this point, I don't necessarily feel it's appropriate to do that. If it's something that council wanted to, we could. This one I really think is unique in nature, and their incorporation of the sawdust district I think is a huge factor in why this roof sign is not like any other roof signs. If you recall, when we did Caribou, it was a bit of a nature of the mansard roof and how the sign was on there. It was technically a roof sign because it sat on the roof, but it did not extend above the top of the roof, let's call it, even though it met the definition. In this case, this is your traditional definition of what a roof sign is. And typically, as you would guess, staff would not support something like this. But I think given the unique character of how they're incorporating the sawdust district and our intention to that redevelopment area in a whole, really provides a unique opportunity for the city where a roof sign can really benefit the broad area, not just their development.
Good answer. Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell?
Is the dog park more of just a generalized idea, or is that something that's actually part of this?
Yep, the applicant at this point intends to construct that dog park. That dog park is just over an acre in size at about 44,000 square feet of fenced-in area.
And is that a private dog park for the residents only, or is that a?
So right now, their plan would be public, but they're still evaluating that. I know Jake can talk about that a little more when he comes up. But yeah, they are still looking at exactly what that would be. But he said it is about an acre in total size, which is not bad.
Ms. Davy?
Actually, I have two questions, one touching on both of those. Mark, can you tell me why the code prohibits roof signs in general?
Yep, it's really an aesthetic choice. Our community, similar to many in the 60s and 70s, decided they did not like the aesthetic appearance of roof signs, and they were outlawed at that time.
Okay, thank you. And my other question does involve the dog park. In the picture with the fence, it looks like a tennis court to me. It looks like it's concrete. What is the base of that going to be?
Yeah, it's all grass. The only portion that's concrete is that small vestibule area. The rest is grass.
Okay, and what's the vestibule area's purpose?
It's really to help with tracking and making sure the dogs don't get out, kind of that double gated philosophy, or you have a second mechanism to stop them in case they would get off a leash or get away. They're not going to get out.
So it's Star Trek. Got it. Airlock.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Good comparison.
All right, are there any other questions, technical questions for the staff? All right, seeing none, I will open the public comment period on this particular agenda item and ask the applicant if they would like to make a statement. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Please state your name and address for the records at the podium.
Jake Buns, 1818 Parmenter Street in Middleton. I think you guys, Mark and Brian, you guys did a great job. You guys might know a little bit more about the development than I do at this point. That was very detailed. Our submittal, our SIP submittal here is very similar to the GIP. We've just been trying to dial in details that come along with furthering along our architectural and engineering plans. I think, like I mentioned, they did a great job describing the project. We're super excited about it. I drove through the area and got to, just before this meeting, got to walk down the river walk, and there was 10 pedestrians, 12 pedestrians maybe out there using it, fishing, biking, playing. So we're really excited to bring the community into our site and open up the park area, the retail shops, the commercial areas, the riverfront restaurant, and make this an area that the community of Oshkosh can enjoy and the river and river walk users can enjoy. So I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have, but I think these guys did a great job addressing the most of the project.
Mr. Perry, could I ask a question?
I've got some concerns about the dog park.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm glad to hear that it's an acre, which isn't huge, but it's bigger than it might be. And I'm also concerned about the fact that you think it might be public access to the dog park. Maybe you don't understand. In this area, I'm not a dog owner, but I think dog parks are incredibly popular. I think if you open it to the public, you'll be sorry. Be too many dogs, and you won't be able to control it. And I don't know how you're going to maintain a dog park, with grass? That's part of my question, and I have another one after you ask that.
Yeah, so, the dog park is going to be privately owned by us, but, open to the public to use. That's what, that's where we're at right now. I think that's something we can consider, not opening up to the public, but, in our opinion, we're putting 22,000 square feet of commercial and retail space in here. We want people utilizing our site, utilizing our buildings, utilizing our space. We want to bring in traffic. So we're happy for, I guess we kind of picture people going to use the dog walk, enjoy the space, and then pop over to one of the coffee shops or something and grab a coffee or some bakery items. And then the other thing, just from a private standpoint, and I don't know if a bunch of it had to do with COVID or not, but a lot of we've seen an uptick in our residents having dogs. So it's a great amenity for our residents to have some sort of dog area and whatnot.
Yeah, and I was going to ask about your experience with how many dogs in your Middleton properties.
Yeah, so we plan on 30%. I would say 5 years ago it was probably closer to like 15 or 20%. Now it's closer to 30, 35. Percent of the units have dogs. And then maintenance-wise, we're maintaining the whole site as is, so it wouldn't be hard for our maintenance crew to go over there and mow the lawn or upkeep.
I'm talking about making sure there is a lawn.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully we can maintain it, so keep the lawn long-term.
Okay, and then another question is, as you know, that's a mainline railroad track that goes right past your property, and the trains are often and fast, even though they're approaching a bridge. And so do you have any plan, is partly the dog park would help keep dogs off the railroad track area, dogs and owners?
Yeah.
You have any idea about how you're going to keep people away from that potentially dangerous railroad track?
Yeah, so the whole dog park is fenced in.
Right.
So that's the big thing.
Yeah, but then people are going to be walking there, could walk their dogs
across.
I don't know how accommodating that is. I couldn't get over, because there's like no streets there now.
Yeah.
To look and see what the track area, the railroad part of it is like.
Yeah. So like, yeah, the fence is the big thing, I think, for us. With that being said, at our Middleton Center property, we have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, really similar to this project, and I've used it before in other meetings with you guys as a comparable property. But phase 1 and phase 2 are on one side of the railroad tracks. Wisconsin Southern owns a railroad track, and phase 3 is on the other side. And we wanted to make it, close to this, where it's a similar cohesive community where you can use amenities in each of the buildings, and residents aren't stuck to just their single building. So in between the buildings and the railroad tracks, we have green space. It's not necessarily a dog park, but a dog run. And we haven't had any issues with dogs, people, residents, or the railroad tracks yet in terms of keeping dogs back. But it's something we can keep an eye on and take a look at moving forward here.
All right, thank you. That's all I have for right now.
Mr. Lyons has a statement.
Just a quick question for you as we were going through the plans, and I apologize, this didn't make it into our staff report. We will need to confirm on the streets what the balcony dimension is to make sure they still fit within your site, or if they extend over the property line.
Okay.
If they do extend into the right of way, we'll have to talk through encroachment agreements, issues of that nature. So just one thing we'll want to confirm with you is what is that balcony dimension.
You mean like on South Main?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. I'll get those numbers.
I know you
for
have that 10-foot setback showing your building where we're doing the plaza area.
Yeah.
So as long as they're not more than 10 feet wide, they should be contained within your property. But if for any reason any do extend over the property line, it's something we'll have to work through as we get a little farther for you.
And I'll get those numbers to you. I think off the top of my head, our balconies are standard balconies, like 5 or 6 feet deep.
So, should be sufficient. I just wanted to bring it up, make sure you're aware of it on the front end.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Kiefer?
Can you just show where that dog park is on the not that drawing, but the bigger drawing there, that one? Or?
Yeah, it's right down here. Kevin, shown here as well, across from that parking lot.
Okay. Any other technical questions? Or questions for our applicant? I'm sorry, we're in public comment period.
I have one, but I can wait for the other commissioners. I don't want to hog. No? bike parking. I was frankly amazed at how many bike spaces you have, which is good in a lot of respects. But where are those bike spaces located? Are they down in the garages or?
Yeah, so we have lots of bike parking in the garages because we've found a bunch of our residents want bike spaces, and a lot of times a lot of our one unit will be using 2 or 3 bike parking stalls. So a lot of our spaces are down in the garages, and usually we put them in corners or dead spaces in the garage where we can't fit parking stalls or up on the walls in front of the cars. But then there's a lot of bike parking in the plazas outside of on the interior of the site next to the commercial and retail areas. And then there's a good amount of bike parking near the clubhouse where people that are using the Riverwalk can access. I think on both sides of the clubhouse, actually, if I'm seeing that correctly.
The public on the Riverwalk able to access your clubhouse?
They won't be able to go in the clubhouse, but they will be able to use the whole site.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So they'll be able to use those bike parking stalls.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
No other questions for the applicant? Okay, so I'm going to open additional comment from the public. Is there any members of the public that wish to speak on this agenda item? Yes, please come up and state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Cindy Kettner. Address is 600 South Main Street. I did receive the email from Mr. Larson. I co-own that building with him. We did just have a few comments regarding that northwest parking lot. It does butt up against ours, but mainly we're trying to figure out, there's 18 to 20 parking spots there for a 3,000 square foot restaurant. So we're thinking that there's going to be overflow, and that's a concern for us. That 20-foot landscaping we were looking at for some of the snow removal. We're not a big a big building, but I don't think that would be good for us if we had to move our snow to a different area. That cost might not be good for us. And then lastly, what we're finding is since the Riverwalk has been put in, the fishermen that do use or did use that area for parking are now using our area or the area where that parking lot is now established or will be established. So that's just my comments that I'd like maybe you guys to consider.
So if I can answer a little bit about the numbers, a 3,000 square foot restaurant by code would need 10 parking stalls, so 18 in our estimation should be sufficient, as well as we have other parking on site. So I think that's, from a code perspective, 18 seemed reasonable to us, just based on the size of the building. In terms of fisherman parking, that is actually one of the elements that at the very southeast corner of the lot is an increased trailhead parking, because we know obviously there's a change in the area. So the city owns the very southeast corner that is shown here where that parking lot is, and that will be some public parking as well as parking for their facility.
Yeah, we're just not seeing them use.
Yeah, right now it doesn't
walk that far
exist,
down.
and Ninth is a struggle, obviously, because Ninth doesn't go through. So we're anticipating that some of those improvements hopefully will start to change that dynamic.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment period. At this time, we ask for a closing statement from the applicant if you choose to make one. Okay. Commission, we need some action on this item.
Make a motion to adopt the recommendations and findings as stated in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have commission discussion on this motion. Ms. Prop.
I'm sorry.
All right.
Back to the site plan, Mark. That's a public parking lot on the southeast corner there?
A portion of it. I'm going to talk, then I'm going to stand up and point. But it is a split, will be a public-private parking lot. So roughly speaking, in here somewhere will be public parking.
Okay.
Private parking.
Okay, for fishermen or Riverwalk users or whoever.
So we're still working out the final details of that with the applicant. Oh, Jake's coming up here. If they want, you can, but we'll wait a second. I hopefully can answer it. But yeah, we're working out final details of that. They're intending to construct that parking lot as part of their development. And we're still working out what that agreement would look like for that joint use of that parking lot between public and private.
Okay, because I think the co-owner of the 600 building raises an excellent point.
Oh yeah, we noticed early on in this planning process that there was going to need to be some additional public trailhead, people coming to use the Riverwalk area. We wanted to make sure there was some parking provided for that.
Okay, thank you.
Other discussion on the motion? Mr. Mitchell?
Two things. One, I just wanted to voice my disagreement with Kathy that I commend you for offering that as a public dog park space. I think that's a great, generous offer to the community. And then the other one is just to point out a note. So our city's sustainability plan encourages use of native plants whenever possible. And there is an active group in the community that does native plantings, and I only bring it up in this case because, as you're possibly aware, more than 65% of the state's endangered species utilize shoreland habitat as their primary environment, and they're endangered simply because of intentional removal of that habitat. And so anytime you have a development along or in close proximity to water, it provides a unique opportunity to kind of counter some of that damaging activity. And while I would find it very unlikely if you would put in just massive swaths of native prairie. One alternative that is a proven countermeasure is the incorporation of small native islands, sort of like island gardens or small garden patches that provide a sort of like a way station for native wildlife such as monarch butterfly that can help to counter that species loss that we see. So I would just encourage you to consider that, and if you needed assistance, there are plenty of local resources that I'm sure city staff can connect you to.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we will have a roll call vote.
Councilmember Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer,
Aye.
Ms. Prop,
Aye.
Ms. Davy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell,
Aye.
Chairman Perry.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Great, thank you. Item number 7, public hearing. Zone change from suburban mixed-use district to suburban mixed-use district with a planned development overlay for properties located 350 to 600 block of South Kohler Street. There are various property owners. As part of this, the City of Oshkosh Community Development Department is the applicant. Have there been any site inspections by Plan Commission members? Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Prop, and myself. Okay, I will accept the staff report as part of the record. Please present us with your report.
Thank you. So this request includes 5 parcels located on the east side of South Kohler Street, north of West 7th Avenue. The sites are all currently zoned SMU and have commercial land uses. Properties include Midas, Kohler Plaza Commercial Condos and Comfort Suites, Old National Bank, River Valley Corral Commercial Condos, and Red Robin. So the city is requesting an area-wide zone change of these 5 parcels from SMU to SMU PD. So we're requesting to add that planned development overlay to accommodate future improvements to the area. It's also intended to provide consistent zoning with the recently approved Panda Express site with the strip mall to the north to accommodate access to the Panda Express site as a common development. So staff looked over these properties and found several non-conforming situations existing on the properties that would necessitate base standard modifications or variances for future site improvements, such as already exceeding impervious surfaces, reduced setbacks, landscaping. There's a list of it right here and in your staff report. So staff is recommending rezoning these properties to add that PD overlay to assist future site improvements by allowing for those BSMs as needed. And it'll also provide consistent zoning with the adjoining properties fronting South Kohler Street, as that whole stretch is zoned with the PD overlay. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the rezone as listed in your staff report.
All right, any technical questions from the Plan Commission to the staff? Having seen none, we will go to the public hearing. The applicant is here, but do you choose to speak, the city? We're good. The city's good. Is there any other additional public comment? Are there people from the public that wish to speak on this agenda item? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this agenda item? All right, having seen none, I will close the public comment period. The applicant is not making a closing statement, so commission action on your part.
Motion to adopt the findings and recommendations as stated in the staff report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Having seen none, we will call for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer.
Aye.
Ms. Prop.
Aye.
Ms. Davy.
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell.
Aye.
Chairman Perry.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
All right, the next item on the agenda is adjournment.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
I don't know who to recognize because John's usually the one. We have a motion, a second, voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. We have 2 workshops.